Great. Yeah, I hate AI. Anyway. Hello and welcome to the Fic List Presents Author's Notes, an interview series where I chat with creative type people about their experiences in and relationships to fandom and fan culture. My name is Erin, and you might know me as one co-host of the Fic List podcast, or as that one girl you see on TikTok sometimes when your FYP sends you dumb jokes about fan fiction. I am a 20-year veteran of the fandom trenches and a former professional arts administrator with an interest in bridging the gaps between creators and fandom. In today's episode, I am so very excited to welcome filmmaker, actor, comedian, musician, and fellow former camp counselor, Daniel Thrasher. Hey, Daniel.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm doing good. It's a very beautiful day.
Yeah, out in sunny LA.
Yeah, it's actually pretty nice out here in February, late February, which I feel like is unique for this part of the world.
Do you ever have those moments where you're like, wow, it's a really beautiful day out here? It shouldn't be. That's a harbinger of doom.
Absolutely, yeah. Like Christmas Day, for example, in Florida, I used to bike around wearing nothing but a Santa hat.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I'm thrilled to have you here. The listeners probably have no idea about this, but we taught at the same summer camp for a number of years. Summer program, I guess we should technically say.
Technically, yes.
Yeah.
It was summer school.
Yeah, and it's actually, for listeners of the podcast, the same summer program where I met Ada Unlaced, who was on this podcast a number of, I think it's years ago now, but it sort of birthed a lot of creative people, which is sort of fun.
Yeah, it was a great program. We had a lot of fun over there.
Yeah, so, that was 2014, now is 2025. So I would love if you wouldn't mind just giving a little introduction for the listeners of who you are, what you do.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Daniel Thrasher. I am a musical sketch comedian slash absurdist at times who, back when it was cool and unique to talk opposite yourself in sketch comedy, that's what I was doing about 5 or 6 years ago. I still do it. But yeah, I'm mostly on YouTube, but I also have been on, an Amazon show produced by CBS, and yeah, I don't know, I just love all things comedy, and sometimes I use music as a way to express that.
Yeah, I definitely remember always thinking of you as like an actor first, so that's sort of an interesting conversation to have about like digital creator versus actor versus like what does all that mean.
Totally, yeah.
But I think in that sort of realm, I think a lot of people you go into creative industries from, enjoying things and having a love of movies, film, music, whatever it is, and being a fan of those things first. So if I say the word fandom to you, how would you just define or describe that for you personally?
For me as a fan, or for me on the receiving end?
Whichever blows your skirt up.
I think that's a really funny way to say that.
Yep.
I think whichever blows your skirt up, I'm going to use that.
You can thank my mother for that particularly antiquated, a little bit misogynistic turn of phrase.
It's very Marilyn Monroe.
Very.
So, I don't know. I think fandom for me is, a group of people really excited about something, and maybe to the point to where they're able to build a community around it, and they're able to make friendships through it. Like, I get a lot of DMs, saying that, I bonded with this girl over, coming from a guy who was like interested in her, and like they ended up going on a date and like bonding over my stuff, which is really silly. But I think just like making fandom is reaction to art, to where you're able to build community through it, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. This question was born out of a conversation I had with Chuck Tingle, noted erotica author and horror author. And he was like, I actually really describe fandom this other way. And I had a moment of like, oh, we have vastly different experiences and understandings of what fandom is. And that is contributing to how we interact with it, which I think is fascinating.
What did Chuck Tingle say? He
basically was like, there is no division between fandom and art. Like once the art exists, it is a like Ouroboros of just, it's all one, which I thought was a really fascinating and frankly generous way of thinking about it.
It's very Buddhist. It's like, Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah. And I was like, well, I was thinking about it like me and all my friends on Tumblr, but that's cool too.
That's awesome.
Yeah, whatever you want to
I
do.
like that approach. That's cool.
Yeah, it was a really interesting sort of thought. So that's the official Chuck Tingle question on the list of the
Love
outline.
that.
Yeah, yeah. So do you have any experience with fandom? Like, would you have considered yourself as having engaged in any fandoms growing up or even currently?
Yeah, I mean, I guess not really, not in the big sense of it. I've definitely had artistic communities that I have been a part of, but it's not exactly like fandom towards a certain thing.
Mm-hmm.
There was one fandom that I wouldn't even say I was a part of the fandom of it, but my biggest like I've never been. Okay, let me take a step back. I went to when I was in middle school. My favorite thing in the world was making videos, and so I was a big fan of making videos.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I get somewhat obsessive over like camera gear, and so like I was a big fan of like the Best Buy coupons and catalogs that would be mailed to my house. That's
Mm-hmm.
one thing I was a big fan of. Um, you know, but when I was in college, I became a pretty big fan of Pentatonics. Like
Yes.
huge.
Yeah.
Like I knew all their names.
Mm-hmm.
I still follow all of them on Instagram. I was sad when Avi left, the bass singer. Like but I didn't have a community around that. I just
Mm-hmm.
tried to share the gospel of Pentatonics with everybody. But I would definitely comment on like Superfruit's YouTube channel
Mm-hmm.
where Scott Hoying and Mitch Grassi had. Wow, no, I guess I really was a fan.
You're like, let
But
me
like,
reassess how I feel about this
yeah, I
in
would
real
watch like
time.
all their videos and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, I don't. They're freak vocalists, like absolutely insane vocalists. And I thought, I don't know. I guess I have like a humanist approach where I'm like, I just love seeing people who are excellent at something, and that really caught my attention for a few years. I've simmered down since, but yeah, that was probably the closest I've been to like a real fan of something.
Mm-hmm.
I have preferences for the most part, but I'm not like a
Yeah.
big fan. A Donald Glover, Childish Gambino, love him to death.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I don't know, but not like never been a part of like a Twitter sphere around a subject or like joined a hashtag on anything. I can't say or tumbled anything or Pinterest anything. I can't say I've done that.
It's probably for the best, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay, good.
Just kidding. I obviously love and adore fandom. It's a big part of my life, but I can also recognize that it can be a weird experience. And then I can only imagine how weird it would be if you experienced fandom as a fan to then go and be a professional creator and be on the other side of it and be like, oh, like this is what
Yeah,
this is like.
yeah,
Um,
it's definitely odd on the other side of it.
yeah, I was gonna ask if your experiences as a professional creator have in some ways changed or influenced your views on fandom now as compared to maybe before you had reached sort of being a known entity.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like I feel like it feels like there is a barrier, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
like fans are on one side, creators on the other. It's like consumers on one side and the distributors on the other. There's always like that kind of divide. And I guess as you're going from a consumer to a creator and you're like crossing that, like climbing over that fence, and you still want to talk and you still want to reach out to fans constantly and be like, look, I'm just like you, but now I'm climbing over and I'm going to the other side, and I'm like, and you respond to everybody's DMs, and you try to be relatable, and you're like, wow, this is cool, like I'm able to pay my rent with this art now, isn't that cool, like, but I'm just like you still. And then like as that gap kind of widens further and further, it's tricky because when you just got to be careful who you respond to on in your DMs. Like I don't really respond to anybody anymore because like there was a couple of moments where people like completely took advantage of me responding, and then it got kind of snippy with me if I wouldn't respond anymore because I'm a lot busier now than I was back then.
Yeah.
And nobody I knew personally, just people who were fans of me when I was a lot smaller,
Mm-hmm.
and they would be disillusioned at me, and it just kind of made me go, oh, this is really heavy. So if you're listening to this and you're a fan of somebody giant, like, it's not you, it's the sheer volume. And like, you know, we message people back sometimes and really get bit in the butt for it. It's strange. It's like, I spent money on this thing and you didn't reply to me. Like, you left me on scene. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? I'm not. Anyway, but that's one thing. So it can get kind of weird over time. And eventually, like, once people stop responding, it has nothing to do with like you as a person. It has everything to do with like they're just trying to protect themselves. That's what I'm doing anyway.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Thank you for sharing that, because I think that is an important reminder to folks in fandom that like it's very easy to really think about like your relationship with the person or the thing that you are passionate about and forget that that person on the other side of things also has their own relationship to like the communication that's going on, to the art, and their own life that like you know very little about. And I do think it is interesting having this conversation about a digital creator, like someone you are mostly known for being on YouTube or in a digital sphere where there's that immediacy of contact, as opposed to a quote unquote like traditional like actor or musician or something like that, where there is an inherent distance because you generally like you have to go to a show to see this person or something like that. Is that something that you've sort of grappled with as your career has shifted, where it's like, I don't even know where I'm getting at with that, but like, is that something that you think about?
Or like immediately feeling the obligation to respond to fans. Is that what it is? Or like,
Yeah, or just feeling maybe like you are more, because you're not playing a character, right? Like the people are fans of you, Daniel, not, oh, this character that you, Daniel, played.
yeah.
Is that something that as a person you sort of grapple with, where it's like, how much do I talk about my personal life? Things like that.
I don't think so. I mean, I generally don't talk about my personal life. I only on my second channel have I really gotten into that, which is a
Mm-hmm.
newer venture in the past year. But no, that hasn't been a big issue for me. I think because a while ago, I don't know if college taught me this or what, but I've been able to successfully separate myself from the content that I put out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it really isn't about me as a person. It's about the jokes that I write and like how tightly edited the video is. And like I feel like I'm a truly a creator in the sense of like I am making a thing and I'm putting out the thing. And if people don't like the thing or if they want more of the thing, then that's on me to respond, but it's not like me that they want. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And like having that separation is extremely important to keeping your mental health like high up, like
Yeah.
for example, I released a video last night that I edited myself and it's really fun and funny and I like it, and it's 10 out of 10 in the rankings on YouTube right now, meaning it's not doing so well, but I'm not taking that personally at all because first of all I launched it at like 1 a.m. I
You're
launched
like,
it
well,
in the
I
middle of
made
the
some decisions.
so, a lot of people haven't seen it yet, and that's fine. And the second thing is like I just gotta trust that, it's gonna run into the right people, and as long as I like something I make, then I'm excited about that. And that's kind of where there is beauty in like the fandom and the creator or whatever, and however you want to, or the artist, if you want to phrase it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think the beauty is like if the fandom and the artist are equally excited about the thing, that's like a really cool, it's almost like you and your lover across the ocean are staring at the moon at the same time. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, this is great. And I don't know, I think it's great. It's like art is a reflection of society and how you feel about things. And if both of you are sort of singing that same song, it's just a really cool experience. I think we're all the same. I think your friend was right, Mr. Tingle.
Oh, Mr. Tangle. He was great, actually. Yeah. Yeah, I think that is a beautiful way of putting that. And I think it does sort of circle back to this idea of like fandom as this orb, like circular experience of like art influencing response, influencing art kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And you've been making content, like you've been on the internet, you've been trying to sort of do this career for as long as I've known you, certainly.
Yeah.
Looking back at your YouTube channel, one of your most viewed videos is still how I accidentally wrote the Office theme song, which is from November of 2012, which tells you how long you've been at this game.
That was 13 years ago.
13 years ago.
It's crazy.
Yep. That video is in middle school. which is the age we taught.
Awful.
It's so awful.
That video is going through puberty right now.
Yeah, it's a tough time.
Yeah,
for all involved. Yeah. So, all that to say, how has your experience of the digital landscape sort of changed over the last 13 years? Like, what are the biggest differences that you're experiencing of the YouTube of 2012 versus YouTube now?
YouTube of 2012 used to be like, you would go there to find something or you would go there to laugh. Now it feels like it's an extension of ourselves. Like it's like I really feel like we're all cyborgs
Yeah.
with, you know, it's something that we check in to. It's like it's something that we have to, well, me anyway, I'm always on YouTube, and but now that there's TikTok and there's IG Reels and there's all these different areas, it's sort of become like a family house you got to visit every day. So like, you know, I'm going to go shake hands with YouTube for a second, but let me go hit up Instagram real quick. He's got something in the oven, and oh, Instagram's over there pointing at TikTok. I'm going to go to TikTok real quick. So it's like you're going to this house of like internet consumption, and you have to go there every day. You're obligated to go there every day. And but back then it was like, you know, a piece of life. This is for me anyway. There could be somebody listening in Ohio being like, "What are you talking about? I work in the coal mines." You know,
Yeah.
like I don't even know if there's coal mines in Ohio. There's probably not.
I don't know. I have not been to Ohio.
My editor, one of my editors, is in Ohio. He lives here now. But yeah, I don't know. It's odd. It used to be a special thing, and now I feel like it's sort of it's a lot trickier now to identify really what YouTube is. I mean, Neil, the CEO of YouTube, just expressed that YouTube is not only the most watched app on every smart TV. That includes Netflix, Hulu, like Disney Plus, all those things. So like YouTube is the king of all streamers currently, period. And who knows, maybe that's just Coco Melon. I don't know.
It could be.
Yeah. And the second most interesting thing is the most watch time that happens browsing wise on YouTube exists on TVs now. Meaning, so like YouTube is mostly experienced on TV now versus 10 years ago, it being your mobile phone, which is like kind of hard to wrap your head around. Everything is different now. YouTube is like a bunch of micro studios of people my size with like, you know, 5 or 6 employees like running around trying to make stuff. And to that extent as well, like there's a lot of people, I really am going on a tangent here, sorry, but there's a lot of people here in LA who, you know, were DPs for commercials and TV shows and stuff, and there's a lot less work to be had for them, and they are coming to YouTube and they're looking for work with YouTubers. Like there's a chance that I'm about to hire somebody who's coming from traditional media that wants to work, you know, for me now. Not, you know, it's just very strange. YouTube has changed completely from what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have such like that is such an interesting perspective too. One, I'm thinking about the TikTok outage, the blip. And I mean, I hate to admit it, like I think of myself as someone who can walk away from the technology or like turn my phone off and not fully crash out. I can't. That taught me that I was like instantly like, oh my God, this thing that is a huge part of my day is now gone to me. And my brain went, what am I going to do? And then I thought, oh no, that's not good.
Yeah.
That's really scary. I don't like that for myself. But to your point, like in 2012, I was most certainly watching like Star Kid musicals on my laptop in my dorm room or whatever. And now I put on YouTube, I put on, you know, the Try Guys or whoever on my TV and just let the videos run. Admittedly, I am a Second Try subscriber, so it is through their app, not YouTube. But
they love that.
Yeah. But to that end, like it is a different ballgame. Like the production level that is attainable on YouTube is comparable to a traditional media site, or in many ways being done by the same people. So it is just a different ballgame.
Totally.
Yeah. And I think that sort of ties into another thing that I wanted to talk to you about, which was that in 2022, you were the second ever beneficiary of the Mythical Creator Accelerator Fund, which is created by Rhett and Link from Good Mythical Morning and Mythical Entertainment, which is meant to invest in the next generation of digital creators. Congrats on that, by the way. That's baller as hell. And I was wondering sort of what that experience has been like and what role you see the more vanguard creators, like the people we think of as sort of like the bastions of YouTube, the Rhett and Link, Hank and John Green, taking on as we continue to evolve into this more streamer-like, more professional realm of digital media.
I mean, I think they see the future of YouTube kind of how Neil described, the CEO of YouTube described. I think they're really the thing about Rhett and Link is that they've mastered the creator economy. Like they have a subscription model with their Mythical Society. They have, you know, fantastic merchandise and like unique merchandise. They created a like an almost web series called Wonder Hole that I was at the premiere at. That was really cool, and it was shot gorgeously and you know, lower budget than a traditional show, but just as entertaining and just as beautiful. And it just I think they really believe in the future of YouTube, and they also, you know, time and time again are talking to me about, you know, the blurred lines between traditional media and internet media, and how like, you know, I remember when people were pissed that a Netflix show was getting nominated for an Emmy.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
like, and now if a show's not on Netflix, nobody's gonna watch it. Like, you know, and I hate to say this because I was on Freevee in a CBS show, and it's like, you know, the viewership that I get on YouTube alone trumps most TV shows in the traditional network space now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just on a monthly basis, which is very strange, and it's also a weird meritocracy that is like distributed to people who aren't ready for that responsibility. Like, I don't look it, but I'm 32, and like, you know, it's I'm very happy that it's happening for me because you and I taught it, you know, Explode, this like great summer program. I feel like you and I had to take a lot of classes on like how to not be gross or weird or you know.
Oh
like,
yeah, the
yeah,
amount
and
of
like
work that took to just be ready for that.
totally,
Yeah.
totally. Anyway, but with all that said, yeah, Rhett and Link are amazing investors and friends of mine. Oh man, they wish me happy birthday. I have to text back.
Text them back right now so you don't forget.
Yeah, I feel so bad. And yeah, so it's just, you know, they're great, and they believe in the future of YouTube, which is it's now micro studios. You know, they bought Smosh for a minute. Smosh bought it back.
Mm-hmm.
I was just on Smosh a couple days ago. That episode will come out later. You know, looking at their warehouse, essentially, like this huge square footage, and like there's 100 employees there at least. And I'm like,
Yeah.
dang, you know what? Like when I was on Dinner with the Parents, it was the same amount of people.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, and Dinner with the Parents is like well, I'm not going to say the budget of it, but I know the exact budget of Dinner with the Parents. And I know that they probably didn't get like a tenth of the audience that Smosh gets.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so weird. You
Yeah.
know, and Mythical understands that. When we first met, Link tweeted at me or DM'd me on Twitter, and he was like, hey, let's meet. And I thought he just wanted to collaborate on a video, just a one-off. You know, I thought they were going to maybe ask me to be on Good Mythical Morning or something. And he goes like, what do you want? And I was like, what do you mean, what do I want? Like, what do I want to do for a video? And he's like, no, what do you want, like, in life? And I was like, oh, well,
Cool.
I want to tour. I want to be on a show. I want to be in movies. I want to, you know, I want to try this, that, this. I have this idea for a merch company. I have this idea for a book, you know, all this stuff. And he went like this, and his eyebrows, he whittled his fingies together, audio,
Yeah.
audio, and his eyebrows went all the way to the back of his head. And then he said yes. And so me and him and Rhett, they sort of came up with this idea for the Creator Accelerator program, you know, and so they want to kind of guide in the next generation of like studios that are coming up. And I think it's smart of them. And I think and they've been amazing advisors, and like down to the minutia of like looking at budgets together and who do you need next on your team, and like they helped me find my new studio, which I love. and found me, creative people to make this a repeatable business with no burnout. And I think that type of like guidance and straight up mentorship is amazing, because this can be a very isolating job if you talk to yourself for a living. So
Definitely.
yeah.
That is really wonderful to hear. And I asked the question mostly because I think it is interesting, again, with this sort of accessibility of digital creators, or the seeming accessibility where it's like you feel like you know them, what it's like to work with the people that you've been watching for however many years. Like, I imagine that could be a little weird at first, where it's like, oh, that's Rhett and Link who've been on my laptop for the last 5 years or whatever, and now they're my friends. Like, I think that is an interesting thing that we're going to see more of, especially as digital continues to grow. And like, I think that's an interesting conversation to have. And like, there will come a time probably when someone comes to you and is like, I've been watching you for 10 years and I'm looking for mentorship. Like, does that blow your mind a little bit?
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I
It's
think it would be weird. I would be like, oh God.
it's very strange. And
Yeah.
it's but I mean, that's what it's all about, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that used to be a thing with sculptors,
True.
like there was straight up mentorship, or what's the word? Apprenticeship was like a
Yeah.
very, so
Yeah.
it's not like, it's just a different
Right.
vehicle, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's a lovely way of thinking about it, the sort of apprenticeship model. Um,
Yeah.
and, as somebody who purely consumes this kind of media, it's nice to see folks like Rhett and Link, or especially like Hank Green, who just like go out of their way to lift up new creators in ways. I think about that a lot in terms of like the success of VidCon, and, the ways that they are now like including folks who are predominantly known from like TikTok in these sort of newer media spaces where they could have been exclusionary and said, you know what? No, like, this is for YouTubers. This is for people with, Try Guys level, Smosh level fan bases. And it's like, no, like, this is where this is going. This is going to be focused on learning
Totally.
and growing. And I know Hank Green is not necessarily as hands-on with VidCon as he used to be, but that sort of ethos, I think, is evident throughout all of those kinds of
You rock, so
projects.
can I peek out for a brief moment?
Please do. This is the space.
Yeah, like last year when I was at VidCon, I saw John Green and I shook hands with him and I was like, "Hey man, nice to meet you, blah blah blah." And he was like, "Oh, I'm a fan." And I was like, "What do you mean you're a fan?" I was like, "What do you mean, sir?"
Yeah.
And then after that, we followed each other on Instagram, and I was like, "No way!" And I love John Green. I auditioned for Looking for Alaska.
No shit.
Yeah. I don't know if they ended up making the TV show or not. Well, they made a movie and a TV show, but
Yeah.
I ended up auditioning for, I think, both. And to play Miles, I think his name is. Anyway, I could be totally wrong. Anyway,
It's fine.
it was.
If it's wrong, I'll
Either
cut
way,
it.
I love that book. I love that book, and
Yeah.
that book made me cry.
Mhm.
Like, I didn't even know that was him, the YouTuber from Vlogbrothers, until I like something happened later. I was like, "You wrote Looking for Alaska?" So like, this was very much a situation where I was deeply a fan of his in both mediums before I connected the two, that they were the same John Green. And then I met him at VidCon last year, and he's like, "Oh yeah, my family loves your stuff." It's just crazy. It's just such a crazy world, and I'm so excited that I got to meet him last year and shake his hand, and now we send each other memes. No, we don't. We don't.
He's busy, man. That is amazing. I don't know fully how I would handle meeting John Green. I think I would also be like, because he's just like one of those people.
Like a chicken. Is that what?
Probably, yeah. Like, no, I'd probably be fine. But internally, there would be a lot of clucking like a chicken. But I'd have a very straight face about it.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm usually pretty good about keeping myself together. Speaking of VidCon, I wanted to talk to you about VidCon because I feel like I have been to now 4 or 5 different comic conventions as a panelist, just like a community like submission. You can go and like basically say, hey, we want to do a 45-minute presentation on this thing. It is not even the same idea as like going to a convention as, an invited guest. It's a different beast. But I am interested in your perspective on the sort of convention experience from the other side of the the table, and what your experiences were like interacting with fans in that space, and like what was that like, as somebody who is a guest, a featured guest.
Yeah, VidCon is a strange beast. I'm a featured creator this year as well.
Oh,
So,
sweet.
but I think they changed hands of
Mm.
like ownership this year. So I'm kind of coming back to just like see what that's about.
Mm.
Um,
You're like, I'm a nosy Nelly. I want to know what happened.
yeah, like the first year I ever did VidCon as a featured creator, I did like a performance.
Hmm.
I was the opener of all of VidCon on Wednesday night. Like there was nobody else. It was just me
That's
on the
wild.
like in the ground floor with a piano and a projector, and it was sort of like something that I did a tour
Mm.
with, and then I brought it to VidCon, and it was so much fun, and people were laughing. There was like 1,000 people there. It was so sick, and that was a great experience. And now that I have this, business and employees, and I'm really trying to like, keep the ship afloat. Business wise, I don't have enough time to sort of write a new live show to perform. So, on my side, we're talking internally about, what do you want to do panels? Do you want to do a meet and greet? Do you want to do blah, blah, blah? And, it's a cool thing. Honestly, the creators we do go there to like see fans and stuff. And what's crazy is my callback on it. Let me say this. Let me give my fandom this because this is really exciting. And I don't usually use the word fandom in that and about people who watch my stuff, but I will today because that's the theme of the day.
Yeah.
A couple VidCons ago, I had a callback to play Greg on Dinner with the Parents,
Mm-hmm.
and the callback occurred the morning after I was the opener for VidCon. This happened 2 years in a row. So during my callback with the director, Trisham Shapiro, the showrunner, John Beckerman, and like people at CBS and Amazon, I literally had a wristband on my hand that I had to have to stay at VidCon. I was in my hotel room at VidCon, and I was like, screw it. I'm gonna show you guys that I, have a good audience. Like, and so I showed them fan art on a Zoom call just like this. And I was like, look at this thing this person painted of me yesterday. Like,
Yeah.
look at this thing. So like I was able to meet them as an excited creator with an active fan base, which I think
Mm-hmm.
made them excited too. I don't recommend anybody do that, but but
You're like,
that was
that's not an endorsement, but it
yeah.
it did work.
But at that point I was like I was on top of the world. I felt great. And
Yeah.
and I was able to kind of literally share my fans' passions with them, and I think that made them trust me as somebody who could carry with them this terrific show that we made 10
Mm-hmm.
episodes of in London. But so I think partially that's why I got cast, like maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's something I love. But yeah, we go there for the fans, but we also do go there for, there's a lot of like backstage events and stuff. There's like an Instagram lounge, a Snapchat lounge in the hotel where you meet other people that are huge, and you network and you figure out a way to collab. And it's really fun because you get on little golf carts backstage, and you're whisked around to the other amphitheater you have to do. And it's really silly. And like, I don't know if it was the last VidCon or not, but I made a song called "My Wiener Is Like," and so,
Great.
uh, you know, and it's just a song of like really dumb euphemisms that mean disappointing, and it's I don't know the age restriction here, and I'm trying to speak decently, but
This is
anyway.
fandom. Say whatever the fuck you want.
Oh, there you go, cool. It's basically like the first lyric is "My wiener's like an Eiffel Tower if it were a Lego set." Um,
Daniel.
like, but I
That's
did that
very silly.
song. I did that song in front of for something called VidCon After Dark.
Oh yeah.
Is that people before me, nobody was actually doing the After Dark part.
Mm-hmm.
People were just doing little shows, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, After Dark means, I could drop the F word if I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to. I could do whatever. And so I went out there, I sang a song about my wiener,
Mm-hmm.
and then after that, I go backstage, and they were like, "What did you do?" Like, I was like, "That's what this is for."
Yeah.
To push the boundaries. And then the guy after me was like, "What the fuck was that?" And he got a big laugh. And I was like, "Okay, cool. So now you all know that you have permission to be brave like me."
Mm-hmm.
And what's crazy is when I started singing that song, everybody was shocked. And by the time the song was over, everybody was clapping their hands and like singing, "My wiener is like." Anyway, so what I'm saying to you, listener, is be brave.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying to you.
And brook no criticism from anyone who's not willing to sing a song about their wiener.
That's right. That's totally right. Regardless of gender, everybody has a wiener in their heart.
Truly. I really appreciate that. I think it's so valid. And also, as someone who has now done a number of panels after dark, we share an ethos because we rucked up with our panel Into the Omegaverse, a long, hard look at smutty fan fiction. And we were like, nice. This is what it's going to be. If you're not into it, get out.
Love that.
Yeah. So, like, I could go off on a whole tangent about how we've like very much sanitized the public sphere beyond recognition. And like, there should be some boundaries. Like, I'm not saying that we should have these like really raunchy things where like kids are inevitably going to see it.
Totally.
But also like in adult spaces, you can talk about adult things. It's fine. Yeah. That's what it's for. Like After Dark should be weird and kooky and probably smutty and funny.
Totally. Write and link to it. They do Good Mythical Evening, and that's great.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of feelings about also the ways in which like we've created sort of this self-censorship culture because we're trying to please an algorithm that like also has to feed it to like everybody, and you're trying to please like every single human on the planet, and you can't do that. So it's like, no, just focus on your little niche audience or whatever. Anyway,
totally.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
Yeah.
Also advertisements.
Yeah. But that's also why our podcast has 8 routine listeners, and like they just are into it, and it's cool.
Shout out.
Hey, we love our 8 people. It's actually not fair to say that. We have a fairly decent listener base. But I think there is something to understanding, and I think a lot of creators are now doing this. I think Hank and John Green in particular are like very good at doing this, where it's like there comes a point where you cannot exponentially grow anymore. Like you've hit your ceiling, and it becomes about deepening your relationship with your existing fan base. It's what Second Try is for the Try Guys. They're like, screw it, we're going to make the shows we want to make for the people who want to see it. And it's not about necessarily chasing new views the way that like a YouTube algorithm or a TikTok algorithm wants you to do. I think there's real creative value in that. Like, I think that's a good thing is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. So I guess speaking to that, like, what are your thoughts on sort of streaming services and digital creators moving into creating their own streaming services, a la the Dropout model, things like that? Is that something that you might like be interested in? Is that something that you like, do you follow any of those? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
I think it's great. I'm a paying subscriber for Dropout. I think Dropout is a terrific service, and I know Keith personally is very excited about Second Try, and like they really love it, and they're talking to Keith about it because he was on my second channel before. He was surprised at just how fast people became members of Second Try, and how great. He was just amazed by the audience. It's so amazing when you. I'm a big believer in that energy is contagious, and I think as long as you're making a product for the right reasons, and I use product when I refer to like building a stream or something. If you're making it for the right reasons and you're putting like great effort behind it, and you're really giving it your all, and you really are putting the audience first when you make this stuff, I think that's extremely important. Then the response is going to be amazing. Like, I know that Mythical Society is its own machine. I mean, there's content on there that you can only find there. It's very special, for them. Second Try is the same. Dropout is rad.
Yeah.
I talked to Sam Reich about it. Like, I talked to him about Dropout personally as well. I don't mean to be name dropping over here, but
I'm finding it very fun. So continue.
Cool, great. But it's like I know these people who own these streamers, and they're all like, they love the audience. It's like a love letter to them. It's like a custom built playground where everybody gets along. It's like, it's awesome, and it's cool, and it's Dropout in particular. The only way they make money, period, and you'll hear Sam talk about this in interviews. The only way they make money is through subscription. They don't do merch. They don't do, well, maybe they do live shows. I don't know, but like their bread and butter is the subscription service. They don't pitch anything else really, and they get to put all that money back into the creators. I think, and they get paid well. Everybody's jazzed over there, and they're not beholden to the algorithm. And a really smart marketing solution that they've come up with is they're giving away a lot of it for free. They're putting clips out of like Make Some Noise on Instagram Reels and TikTok and all that, and it's working.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think it's great. I think it's awesome. I think Dropout services a completely different niche than anything you can find on Netflix or even YouTube, and I think it's wonderful. So I think streamers are great. Is that something I've considered for myself? I do have an idea for a show that I kind of want to put behind Patreon, but it's I actually do exclusive content behind Patreon of me like talking about my creative process and stuff. And my mantra for Patreon is like, hey, let's inspire each other over here. And it's basically me showing, the next song I'm working on or like the new studio space, props and all this stuff. But as far as like building a streaming service, I'm not there yet.
Yeah, I mean that's a big thing. Yeah, I think there is, to that point though, like a real interest in fandom for this sort of meta analysis and meta content of like, okay, I like the thing you make. I also want to hear you talk about how you make the thing you make.
Yeah.
Which obviously is some of the genesis of this conversation here. It's something that I consume a lot of, especially I think as you get older, like I think maybe because I'm also 32, I'm like, how does the sausage get made? And there's sort of an interest there. But I think that can be so valuable also, to go back to the conversation about like young creatives and, having this really honest and open conversation about what does it take to be a YouTuber? What does it take to, how are you doing it versus how does someone else? Like, I think in one interview, I want to say that I was watching of Keith and Zach talking about Second Try, which I've obviously consumed a lot of content around. They were talking about how like Sophia Nygaard from BuzzFeed has a very different model from how they have gone off and done their stuff, but like she is successful in her own right and in her own way, in a way that works for her versus how they do their thing where it's more show based. And I think that sort of meta analysis of the way things are trending is just so fascinating.
Yeah, it's great. It really is like a weird meritocracy now, where like you can do, and I mean that in the sense of like, if you're doing something, there's more than one way to be right.
Right.
There's more than one correct way to run a business, and I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
And I think I'm so glad the gatekeepers are a dying breed. To be honest, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
So glad,
I agree.
because when you knew me, I was auditioning for movies and TV shows constantly, and it would usually get down between me and one other person. It would always go to the other person, and I would get real frustrated. And now I'm like, screw it, man. I'm gonna make my own thing, and
Yeah.
and this is a much cooler to me opportunity. I was very grateful for my time on TV, and I'm sure it'll happen again. But it's I love this job. It's a great job.
It sounds great. It's not a job that I could do, is the thing that I'm learning as I grow into my adult life.
Why do you feel that?
I tried, obviously, to go into theater and be a professional stage manager and company manager and do that kind of behind the scenes work and have the sort of like gig life. And I really did not thrive with having to build my own schedule all the time, constantly having to like seek out jobs as opposed to having something stable. And I also just like really benefit from having one thing that pays the bills and that's it. And then being able to like focus my creative energy outside of that. So I have a really boring day job that pays way better than any creative job that I've ever had.
I love that.
Oh my God, it's awesome. It's like, I'm in the union. It's fantastic. It's a unionized job. It's the way that I talk about it, it's like the most money I've ever made for the least amount of work. And I wish everybody had that opportunity because it's the best.
I'm so, and I mean this, and it's going to sound silly, but I am so jealous of that.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's incredible. And because of that job, so all of my jobs before that were in creative industries. So I was in the museum field and then I was in theater. I didn't have the bandwidth or frankly, the strength to like go and be creative anymore because it was all going to my day to day, just trying to survive.
Your reserves were dry.
Yeah.
At the end of
So now it's like I sing with a labor chorus who is like, which is, like we go to protests and stuff and sing folk music. It's cool. And like I can do this podcast and not feel super burnt out and like actually have energy to do it. Like I can, go build out all of our, we have to travel for Comic-Cons and stuff. Like I can actually afford to do that because they don't pay you when you're just doing submissions.
Right.
You get a free ticket, but that's about it. But I'll take it. No, for sure. Like, not New York Comic Con, please don't. I really appreciated that free ticket. But the idea that like, I think there are some people who really thrive in this sort of like make your own way entrepreneurial style of working. And I think that is a way that a lot of people are taking it with digital creatorships. I was reading some article that was basically like a lot of people are aiming to not necessarily become the next Rhett and Link, but to have like a stable income where they can continue to do the work. But it's not necessarily about becoming like famous and millionaires. Like that's a misconception. And I think there are a lot of people who thrive in that. I don't happen to be one of them.
It's tough. It's a tough gig, and I love that you own that, because like if you didn't own that, you would always have that itch in the back of your mind, and it would drive you nuts, you know? Because like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there was a morning where I woke up and like, this wasn't recent. This was years ago, but I remember like I might have even been in college where I was just like tired. I was like tired, and I woke up and I was like crying, and I was like, I wish I just wanted to be a teacher. You know, like I wish
there could have been an easier way.
Yeah, and by the way, just wanted to be a teacher is an insane thing to say, because they have a very hard. Well, we know in a light version, but we know that it's a tough job, you know, and but having a routine with a stable income and like a predictable, you know, 3% raise every year, you know, it doesn't matter if you're relevant or not, you got the gig, you know, it's that's such a peaceful place to put your heart. Like,
oh yeah.
You know, and it's just not it's not the life that I signed up for. But I think I kind of resigned myself to being like, for better or worse, I'm going to be an entertainer until I die. And like now that I'm on the side where I get recognized pretty much every time I go out, if I'm out for long enough, it's, you know, or around that many people, it's like, oh right, as long as I look like this, like this is going to be my life.
Yeah.
And so it's a little scary, but it's also like, nah, this is it though. This is it. Because if I didn't do it, it'd be like a rash that I'd be itching all the time, and like I think Bo Burnham says in one of his specials is like, if you can live your life without having an audience, do it.
Yeah, I think that was something that was said to me at one point too, where it was like, if you can do any other job, do that, like, whatever it is. But I do think there's some value also in like I feel like, so I think this harkens back to like the SAG and WGA strikes over last summer before, where there were a lot of conversations around like creative people also deserve to have stability and be able to like pay their bills, and like that is what a union is for. And I hope that the way that we're heading, I think we're having a really interesting conversation about labor in the art space, where, you know, obviously with the strikes and even things with like the streamers, where Dropout is known for, you know, they profit share back to the people that have participated over the course of the year, which I think is incredibly generous and deeply atypical. You know, they're not interested in necessarily, like, Sam Reich is not pocketing that money. He's giving it back out. Right. Like, I hope that's where we're going, right? Where people can have a creative, like a more sustainable model of living a creative life, as some of these more traditional media outlets honestly might start declining. I think we are seeing that in real time, where a lot of these more like the studio system is dead. Like, it's just not what it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not what it used to be. And you know, if anybody from CBS or Amazon is watching this, it's like, yeah, I don't know. They got some work to do. It's definitely different. Like, even residuals are not what they, you know, like an actor could have been on a couple episodes of Seinfeld and get paid forever. Right. Residuals from traditional media, now it's not like that. Like, residuals are baked into the contract for, if you're a lead on a TV show on Netflix, for example, get paid per episode, and that's it. And then you're done. It doesn't matter if like something else buys it, you know, you're not getting anything on the after it's launched.
Right.
Which is not, it's like, it's basically, if you sign up to being an actor right now and just an actor, you're absolutely choosing to be in a casino for the rest of your life.
Yeah. That's why I don't do it.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. It's like, no thanks. Yeah. I can't do it. I can't be job hunting my entire life. I just couldn't do it. It wasn't for me.
And because we're 32, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm tired.
Yeah, for sure. I woke up tired.
I had like the most severe vitamin B12 deficiency that my doctor had ever seen.
Wow. Oh my God.
It was really bad. Like, dang. I was so depressed that I just wasn't eating. And she was like, yeah, so you're supposed to have a value of like 400 milligrams per whatever in your blood. You're at 102.
Whoa.
You need
To help
shots. And I
you
was
got
like,
on it?
oh yeah, it got taken care of. But she was like, yeah, you need injections like now. And I was like, okay.
I was asked to go to my old college, SCAD,
Hmm.
to introduce Rob Lowe for the commencement. Like I was an honor, as a speaker,
Yeah.
which is cool. And while I was there, they had me talk to some of their students about, you know, TV and what it's like to be on TV versus the internet and all this stuff. And I was like, all right, cool. And I went there to the performing arts program,
Hmm.
which has its own casting. It's a great program. And all these kids kind of want to go to New York and LA and be on TV. And I kind of had to tell them all. I was like, "Hey guys, so just got back from LA. Pretty sure TV is dying.
Pretty
Like,
sure you're not gonna get on there.
I know you're all spending $50,000, $60,000 a year. I know you're gonna leave here, with $250,000 in debt. And when you get out there, you're gonna be, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. There's nothing for you. It's a desert. It's a desert right now.
Hmm.
Please go to the internet. Do what you can to be on the internet. That was my message. That was my gospel. Was like, try to do stuff on the internet. It's so much easier to make money on the internet as a creative person than it is to, I think if you're excellent at what you do, at your art,
Yeah.
if you are excellent, and I mean that objectively, excellent at what you do with your art, and you are not making money from it, that means for sure you are bad at marketing. That's my thesis. I will die on that hill. Like, you could be an excellent knitter. You could be an excellent sculptor, like somebody who does lipstick great. Like, just lipstick. Like somebody who makes soy sauce. And if you're not making money off of that, that means you're bad at marketing.
Yeah. I think I can agree with that. I think that is a like I also so to the flip side of that is someone who doesn't make money off shit. I think there's also value in being like I am a creative person with no monetary ambitions for it.
Yeah,
Obviously, we're talking
totally.
about this in a professional setting, so
Yeah.
like it's a slightly different thing. But like I think more people should have hobbies and be okay with it being a hobby.
Yeah, you're right. You're totally right. And I realize where I'm coming from is like if I'm lecturing a room of college students
Oh,
who
sure.
want
Yeah,
creative
yeah,
professionals, but like that, you're totally right as well. Like,
yeah.
yeah, not that you need me to validate what you're saying, but I completely agree with you is what I'm saying. That
Yeah.
yeah, hobbies are great. Like for example, I've got two keyboards behind me right now. I've got a couple pianos here, and it's weird because like it used to be just a hobby, and then once you monetize it, it's like God, sometimes you can kind of spoil your own hobby by trying to make it monetizable. Like my
Yep.
sister, for example. My sister is an amazing cook. I go there every Thanksgiving. She slams down. I mean, it's crazy. Her husband is Mexican, so she'll make these crazy like Mexican dishes that are amazing, as well as like traditional American Thanksgiving type stuff. And it's just like this cornucopia of like multicultural deliciousness. It's the best food I've ever had. And I'm like, why don't you open a restaurant? She's like, are you kidding me? Then I would hate it.
Yep.
Like,
Absolutely. She's so right.
and I hate that she's right.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I hate that she's right.
Yeah. Well, I also do think one of the critiques I would have for a lot of like creative colleges and places like it's the same whether you're going to like a $60,000 a year private institution or if you're in like classes at a community college. Like I do wish people were more honest, straight up, about the state of the industry at that level. Because like when I left my college, all of my professors had been out of the game for like 30 years teaching.
Totally.
And when I went into it, they hadn't, first of all, they hadn't taught me business at all. It was all, let's read Shakespeare 1,000 times. Bless. I really had a great college experience. I did. But it did not prepare me at all for the realities of what that business was going to be. And they couldn't because it was just a different game than the one that they had played. And I wish more colleges even had folks like you coming in and being like, guys, this is the situation. Let me be level with you.
Let me tell you something horrible I told to these kids.
Please do.
What I told them was, I told these students at SCAD, I was like, hey, what do you think it means when they say acting is a business? And somebody was like, you need to get headshots? I was like, yeah, okay. You need to invest in yourself? I was like, yeah, okay, yeah. And I was like, how about this? Acting is a business because when you're on that screen, you need to be interesting and compelling enough to get people through the show so that way they can get an ad for toothpaste. I was like, you are the in between the ads. You're the billboard between the ads, so that way Colgate can put ads on that TV show and get their money back. Because if you're not interesting enough, or compelling enough, or conventionally attractive enough, or funny enough, or whatever it is that you got going on for you, whatever that is for you, if you're not that enough, you're not going to get cast, because then nobody's going to stick around for the toothpaste commercials. And like, they hated that, man. They did
Yeah.
not like that.
And all the youths, the light left their eyes.
Like, that's what that is.
Yeah.
That's what that is a little bit. It's like you got to create moments for people to want to stick around and pay for the Netflix subscription, or that ad for toothpaste, or diapers, or whatever.
Yeah. And then you got to figure out how to do your taxes, which is a whole other thing.
Oh, I don't do those.
That's a good call. Don't. That's really not fun. Those I-9s are brutal.
Yeah, I believe it. No, yeah.
That was also, I was like, I'm not doing I-9 shit anymore. It's over. I want
Good.
W4, give me death.
Good. I love that. Automated.
Yeah. I was like, please just take my state taxes out of my paycheck so I don't have to think about this.
I can't imagine that myself.
And then, the first time you do it and you fuck up and you owe the state $2,000 and you don't have $2,000 and you're like, oh God.
Yeah.
That's the stuff they should be teaching in college, and I will die on that hill.
No, I totally agree. Taxes for creative professionals, or taxes just in general.
Yeah, for sure. We have gone so far afield of the outline that I sent to you, which is totally fine. I think this has been a very fascinating and interesting conversation about the realities of being a creator, which is really, something that I'm interested in, obviously. But
well, thank you.
Yeah. I was wondering, one of the questions that I did want to make sure to ask you, because I think this is sort of an interesting thing to ponder and think about, is there anything that you wish fans better understood about being a creator? And conversely, is there anything that you wish you knew about fandom? Or is there a question about fandom that you're like, what? I don't understand this. Explain it to me.
Yeah, I guess I have one for each.
Great.
So something that I would say to people who don't understand, like, creators, creators who like quit, or like why burnout is so prevalent and all that stuff, is like, it's like, let me give you the metaphor that I've come up with, is some people don't realize they're afraid of heights until they wake up on Mount Everest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it feels like. It's like, you're peering over your shoulder everywhere you go, because you're like, is that person actually on their phone, or are they trying to take a video of me? Is that person staring at me because they know who I am, or is it because, like, maybe we met in real life? Or, it's like you're constantly going to be paranoid, and it's in a big way or a small way. I'm on SSRIs, so it's a small way now. It is scary. It is like you wake up on Mount Everest, and you could either stay at the summit, or you got to work the next 5 years to climb down and have like a safe landing.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough, and it's not an easy job. It is a lot easier and cushier than most jobs, I will say. Easier in the sense of, it comes out more free flowing if you're a personality or something like that.
Yeah. And it's not like day laboring. Like, we can recognize that it's not manual labor in the way that other jobs are hard,
Totally, yeah. It's a different thing.
Yep. And that also doesn't make it easy, which I wish people...
Right, yeah, it doesn't make it easy per se. Like, try managing a team of people to fulfill your creative vision. It's very hard, not because they're bad, but just because it's really hard to communicate what's in your head sometimes.
It's work. It's a job.
It's work. Yeah. But with that said, like, that's what it's like on the creator side. It can be very scary, but also it's a tremendous responsibility. And I was lucky enough to meet somebody on her way out of life, and like, she wanted to meet me before she left, and we met, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, when I was just getting started, just, not even at 1 million subscribers yet. And that changed my life forever. That made me go, oh, okay, this is why I do this. Like, this was something that this person could share jokes from and about stuff that I make. And she was very adamant about letting me know that she was such a fan and it was so cool. And that gave me like a bulletproof vest for the rest of my life to where I don't care if anybody likes my stuff or not. She did. So
Yep.
like, so to me, being a creator is 1,000,000% worth it. It can be scary, but as long as you give back whenever you can and try to ground yourself and don't surround yourself with yes people, it's absolutely worth it. If you have that itch, try it out. But as far as fandom goes, I'm going to ask you a question now.
Go for it.
When do you decide to go all in on something?
Oh, that's a great question. It's not a conscious decision. The hyperfixation chooses you.
Okay. Okay, so you're like hypnotized.
A little bit. I think I can only speak for myself and my own experience of fandom, but so particularly as a queer person and particularly as like a woman, often what grabs me is something that speaks to an experience I've had or some aspect of my life that I haven't seen elsewhere or isn't necessarily shared often. And if it is done, even if it's done poorly, which often it is,
Sure.
then that is usually what will grab me and get me in. Regular listeners of this podcast will know that like one of the big fandom moments in my life was The Magicians, which was a sci-fi show. Are you
Oh
familiar with that
yeah.
at all? Yeah. So it's a whole long story, but basically it was the most aggressive queer bait I'd ever seen in my entire life. And from that was born one of the most beautiful fandom responses I've ever experienced in my life. Basically, they had these two characters who, well, like, they were together. They'll fight me on this. The showrunners will fight it, but
Okay.
like they were in love, and then they basically at the last minute were like, "Haha, fuck you." No, they're not, and
Oh,
killed one of them, and it was so profoundly insulting as a queer person to like have that experience. But fandom really rallied around the other actor, not the one who had been killed off, but the other actor who was a queer man and had been talking about how important that experience was, playing a queer character was for him. And we all we went to conventions and we talked to each other and like we reached out to each other. We raised a whole bunch of money for like suicide prevention and like all this kind of stuff.
well,
Yeah, and like that to me is what fandom can be at its best, right? Even in bad situations, you rally around this thing because it means something to you, so you choose to do something positive with it. I didn't consciously decide to do that; it just happened.
I love that. Did you all decide to keep watching the show after that happened, or did you all decide to drop it at the same time, or what?
We intentionally nuked the show,
Wow.
which was also something that fandom can be petty. We were watching the Nielsen ratings for every episode after that happened, and we were like, "Can we get it lower next week?" Yeah,
Whoa.
like it was a really intentional. Like we're not watching the show anymore. But that also, I mean, that particular show was run by somebody who had also burned fandom before, doing the exact same thing. So we were all like, okay, the showrunners here are like very. They were being really antagonistic with fandom, and like I think sometimes fandom is willing to be like, you told a story, I didn't like it, I'm gonna go about my business and write fan fiction instead. But in this case,
Mm,
because there was such like an antagonistic relationship with the showrunners, we were like, you're going down.
totally.
Am I
Wow, that's
proud of that reaction? Debatable. Did we do it?
uh,
Yeah.
that's cool. Wow, it's almost like a union.
Yeah. It could be
Totally
fun.
interesting. Wow, I've never. Maybe I should dive into more fandoms and just kind of like understand the group psychology of like fandoms because that's something I've never really um, learned about that I could benefit from learning about. Just like because on my end, like there's a lot of responsibilities that you don't think about in the front of your mind. It's like an instinct thing. It's like this feels right or this feels wrong for some reason. I can't really put my finger on it, but I think that's cool. I think it's something worth digging into. You
Yeah.
rock. That's great.
Oh, stop. Thanks. One of my sincere belief is that a lot of shows, networks, places would benefit from having a fandom person in their marketing team and in their creative team. Because a lot of like not even necessarily to say no you shouldn't do this or like whatever, but just to inform, because fandom can be so specific in the way that it responds to things, there's usually patterns of behavior that you can see within a fandom that if you understand that, at least you will know as the person putting this thing out there what is likely to be a response to something. Because if they had handled the story that they wanted to tell in a very different way, it would have had a different response in fandom. And anyone could have told you that if you've spent any time in fandom. We all could have been like, this is not the way to do this.
Yeah. Better respect them fans.
Yeah. I could give, like, I feel like a whole primer should be available to people when they get into something that could potentially have a fandom and be like, just so you know, this is what's likely to happen.
I think it's worth I think it's worth seeing a presentation like that. The power of fandom, I think, is cool.
Yeah. And like, not every fandom is that intense. That was a very specific experience, a very intense fandom. But like, to answer the question of like, when do you go all in? Like, I do think there are moments. I think every person who considers themselves in fandom can pinpoint a time where something like that happened, where they were like, oh, like this was a big crazy thing that happened, and like I was part of it when it happened.
That's cool.
Yeah. I love explaining fandom to people. I think it's really fun.
I think it's great. I think on my end it's really cool to learn about.
Yeah.
It's something that I can really like. I really should look more into that.
Well, just be careful what you Google.
I will not. I'm going to learn that lesson on my own.
Anyway, we've gone off on many a tangent. Now we're just chatting, basically. But thank you again for taking your time to do this. This has been really great.
Thanks for having me. I agree. I'm going to be shooting a really silly thing here in about 40 minutes
cool.
at the studio, and I'm going to tell my team I had a wonderful time.
Yay. Do you have anything that you want to promote to the 8 people listening to this?
No. Well, I'm going to be doing a lot of fun music videos soon. If you guys like funny music stuff, take a look at my channel, Daniel Thrasher, on YouTube. It's not the topic; it's the one with the more subscribers. Yeah, you'll see some weird music videos over the next couple of months.
Cool. Thank you for listening to the first ever episode of the Fic List Presents Author's Notes, and thank you so much again to Daniel for joining me on this inaugural episode. And as always, a special thanks to our supporters on Ko-Fi, including our friends of the pod, Danielle, Rose, Charlotte, Leo, Allie, and Dion. If you'd like to, you can help us offset the costs of podcasting through donations on our Ko-Fi, ko-fi.com/theficlist. Every dollar quite literally makes a difference, offsetting production costs such as hosting fees, website maintenance, and more. If you'd like to see more of Daniel's work, you can find him on the internet at Daniel Thrasher, mostly on YouTube, but across all platforms. And as always, you can check us out if you'd like more at theficlist.com and all of the things. I'm mostly TikTok, but also a little YouTube, and now Blue Sky. So, there's lots of options. We are also headed to AwesomeCon DC. If you are someone who's going to be in Washington, DC for AwesomeCon, please hit up one of our 4 panels. We are hosting Actually Fandom Trivia on Friday, Filters, Warnings, and Tags Oh My, or How to Navigate AO3 also on Friday. Pop in the Biggest Bottles, celebrating queerness in animation on Saturday. And last but not least, OTP or No TP, a tournament of cosplay pairings on Sunday morning. This is going to be our 4th time hosting that particular event, and it's going to be very, very fun. So if you'd like to come hang out with us, that is going to be the first weekend of April. Hope to see you there. And again, thanks for listening. Have a good one, y'all.